Straight through, be true. You're fine, staring at you. What you deny, don't prove the future. Defy, stay here and be my sunlight.
Hi guys, this is the Revisit Reviews and I have to look into that. And when I speak, and this is the second podcast that we are hosting. I don't know ye kab aayega, maybe it may be the third or the fourth, but nonetheless give it up for Vrnda, the Soul Queen Dhar, who's also singing for us and singing for a lot more bands now across the
When
nation.
did that happen?
गाया नहीं तूने चिराग टोडी वगैरह के लिए, which is
Oh, yeah.
in any
Chirag is a dear
case,
friend, yeah.
give it up for Vrnda, who
Give it up
is
for Abhay Sharma.
joining us for the podcast or the / session today. And Vrnda, that was Straight Through that we just came out with a few months ago. And first of all, tell us how you've been here. अभी कितने टाइम हो गया पैंडेमिक को? 2-2.5 साल.
Yeah, I mean, I've been well, and COVID has been hard for, I think, all of us. And yeah, we're all recovering as a collective, social order. And yeah, it's going to take a while, but yeah, we're here to stay, right?
Because the thing is that हम लोग वही बात कर रहे थे पहले वाले पॉडकास्ट में कि जब पैंडेमिक हुआ तब अपन लोग का थोड़ा ऐसा सीन था कि we were on a better trajectory as a band.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And now that the pandemic hit and फिर उसके बाद we tried holding on but we couldn't, in the sense that फिर हमारा music / content थोड़ा कम हो गया था because of various reasons. And do you want to talk about that, like just for
But
a bit?
I mean, I don't know if you're asking me to take a stance upon whether, I mean, how I feel about us stalling for a bit.
Yeah. Stalling, good word.
Yeah, I mean, I personally feel like everybody needs a break, right? We've been at it for quite some time and we've been touring. We've been releasing a lot of new music. We've been working on a lot more standards personally, and there's been a lot of practice and rehearsing going on in the background.
Hasn't stopped.
Music hasn't stopped, right?
But yeah.
It's just that the projection has stopped, right?
हाँ, जो एक हम लोग MBA स्टूडेंट्स की तरह मिलते थे, यार अगर हम ये कर देंगे तो फिर ये होने वाला है. एंड फिर मैं श्रेय से कन्वर्स भी करता था कि श्रेय अगर हम ऐसा कंटेंट निकालेंगे तो फिर ऐसा हो जाएगा. वो it's kind of gone down the drain.
But I don't think that's particularly bad. There's nothing wrong with
Obviously.
that. Because I think that gave us...
तभी तो तेरे को बुलाया है कि ताकि तू ये सब बोले ताकि दूसरों को
Yeah, exactly. That's the agenda.
But in any
Or
case,
rather the propaganda.
how have you been? Like, what have you been working on now that we've seen your rise from, born in Delhi?
Oh, there's been a rise.
There has been.
There's a rise. I'm surprised.
That's because she thinks that I am too critical of everyone.
Of course.
But ऐसा नहीं है. I do like things.
Oh, and what do you like?
We can discuss that later. But ठीक है. How has your journey been thus far? Like, पहले तो ये बताती कि तू आती कहाँ से, in terms of not just कि तू रहती कहाँ पर है, but musically, where do you come from?
I think I've mentioned this a couple of times. I'm particularly influenced and inspired by the gospel tradition, right? My passion for jazz or my love for jazz comes from my love for gospel, blues, soul. So that was where I started. That's my beginning, right? And that sort of helped me retain a lot of, perspective pertaining to how I should in particular approach jazz as a vocalist, because that's a really tricky terrain. I'm still a student of music. I'm still a student of jazz. I haven't accomplished anything yet.
And just to get things straight as well, you also plan to learn keyboard, piano, that is, to get the harmonic element of all kinds of music that you're fond of going for.
My dear friend Rhythm has been helping me figure that terrain out.
Yes.
And I hope to I really want to be able to, play the keyboard and sing together at the same time. I'm talking about jazz here, right? So that's again a very tricky terrain because there's a lot more going. There's a rhythm section. There's a lot of harmony. There's a lot of changes happening. So you ought to keep a track of everything as a vocalist. That's what the perspective right now entails. Yeah.
So when you say that you're coming from gospel and all, it's literally an oral or oral, whatever you say, oral tradition of listening to things जैसे हम लोग इंडिया में we do it, कि हम लोगों को पता है. It's a lot of big jazz musicians also talk about it, that a lot of the times we already know what we want to sing and play in our head because हमने music सुना है. It's just that a lot of people choose knowing over like feeling. Ki, do I really know? Is this like a minor 7 sharp, you know, whatever this.
I suppose you're talking about the emoting side of things. I mean, connecting with the music that you're playing, right? Like on a, I don't want to say spiritual, but yeah,
that has happened because for you, because you can hear it in your musical choices and
I suppose I can. Yeah. I mean, I've also gotten down to composing my own songs, right? I'm still in the process of doing that. Again, I'm learning and I'm a student of jazz. And I'm sort of trying to inculcate all of my learnings into how I compose things, right? So what you're talking about in the sense that, you know...
Teko references pata hai.
Yeah, exactly. Like I could, you know, I can contextualize things now. I can really, you know, place things better in terms of, okay, so if I am, putting in a certain change, where is that coming from? That's coming from a blues tradition. That's coming from a gospel tradition. I couldn't do that before.
Name a few artists that you were fond of and who got you into these, like, just say, for example, some singers.
Okay. Anita Baker has to be on top of my list. She's changed my life. She's been changing my life for a while. And there's Patrice Rushen, there's Erykah Badu. Whitney Houston has obviously been a huge part of my life. I mean, I got into soul via Whitney Houston. There's also Rose Royce, another legendary soul singer. So there's obviously Stevie. I mean, you can't really miss him.
There will be no music
and
without him.
Yeah, there's no music without him. And these are a couple of names that have definitely inspired me. My songwriting, my techniques, and my entire perspective towards voice health in general. So yeah, that's there.
So in the sense that you're going back in time as well. When you talk about these things like 2000s, 90s, you also named someone from the 80s.
Yeah.
Then 60s and 70s as well.
Aretha, there's Shaka Khan, there's all of these people.
So, do you think that music learning and listening, in that sense, also has to go back in time to kind of understand where it all came from?
Of course, you have to historicize things, not just music. I mean, if you want to talk about any sort of reality, you have to historicize it. You have to understand the historical trajectories that went into, you know, making what it is in a sense today. So, I mean, I'm going to give an example, right? So there's this artist called Michael Mayo, right? And he's awesome. I've been learning so much from him. I mean, not directly. I plan to seek lessons from him soon when I have enough. When I have enough savings in the account. It's very expensive. But yeah, so Michael Mayo really helped me contextualize Ella Fitzgerald. For the longest, I struggled with contextualizing Ella, her solos, where she's coming from. And
is it because we've not really heard that as kids growing up? Because hum ek geet ga chuke hain.
Yeah,
that's the generation.
Because that's not, unfortunately, I mean, I don't want to say unfortunately, like it's just.
But it is rather unfortunate that, I mean,
it is
we were not introduced to all kinds of music.
We were rather exposed to somebody like Lata Mangeshkar, right? So we've had a different tradition.
No, that is still our tradition. But I'm saying
that is our tradition, yeah.
Pop music also could have been differently placed for us. Like,
of course.
We blame our parents for that. Like, we blame our parents for a lot of things.
And our parents blame their parents. So it goes really long.
Yeah. The rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, unfortunate तो उस वे में बोल रहे हैं कि हमको शायद और चीजें introduce हो सकती थी.
Yeah, but I mean, our context has been different, very different, right? You have to understand the way we consume things. It depends on how we are as a community, as a people, right? Wow. And you have to take that into consideration. You just can't say stuff like. So what you mean
is basically not to be Kathy Newman, but what you really mean is कि मतलब if you're Punjabi, then there's a certain kind of tradition. If you're Malayali, then there's a certain kind of tradition.
See, I mean, this is my personal understanding, and I don't have to be right. Okay, you can definitely disagree with me, which you more often than not do. So I'm completely, used to this. So I don't understand why people box genres. I don't understand why people categorize genres, right? This is, I mean, music is a broad field, right? And like, I mean, for instance, I come from Kashmir, right? So I would want to contextualize my own understanding of my community, of my place, and of my history. And I can potentially connect that with something like like a musical tradition, right? So you don't have to view these categories as like independent categories. There's like a huge correlation between the two.
They can be an independent, because then Vrnda, the problem with that argument is, like, just as a listener, is that अब कश्मीरी ट्रेडिशन में वेस्टर्न म्यूजिक का तो कहीं भी नाम नहीं था ना. So in that
there's
sense,
rhythm.
Yes, for sure, but maybe tradition is an ongoing thing.
It is,
Because
yeah.
that 100 साल में अगर कोई देखेगा कि एक कश्मीरी ने अपने आप को एक्सप्रेस किया with Western music as well, then that will become the tradition.
I'm not saying mix everything up.
Yeah.
I'm saying understand where you come from.
That is for sure.
Because no. I think you got me. Yeah. But you know, some people are really ashamed of where they come from, and
because they come from Hakikat Nagar, na? But ठीक है, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, just be aware of where you come from and who you are, and then you'll have a different perspective towards music. It's going to be more wholesome. It's going to be more holistic. So
inward as well as
outward, yeah. Implosions and explosions.
क्या बात है? ठीक है भैया. अच्छा ठीक है. And so again, talking about segueing into somehow into Ella Fitzgerald. तो अब Ella वाला जो scene है, Ella, Sarah Vaughan, वो जो Dina Washington and all of these other
D.D.
Bridgewater. ये जो एक this entire category of musicians, stalwarts, इनमें तेरा पहला interest नहीं था. And just to be honest to viewers, she was always, and I like this perspective as well, you should always be into music that is hitting you right here initially. And Ella and all did not hit you here, it was hitting you here, but now it's also hitting you here.
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
तो वो कैसे हुआ? Is it because of the music that you were listening to, or like what happened?
That's the thing, right? For me, primarily it was about technique. Like initially, okay, how is Ella soloing? Okay, where is she coming from? How is she recognizing certain changes, and what is her? Why is she going for a certain solo the way she is? Okay, so it was more about technicalities, right? For me, I mean, this is something that Gretchen Parletto talks about. I was, attending one of her interviews, and she talks about how there are 3 layers to musicality, right? There's the performative technical aspect. That's the first tier. The second layer is your emotional capability, right? As an artist, which translates into emoting while you're performing. Sure. Then there's the third layer, which is called the spiritual layer. So for me, if you were to view my journey of musicality in terms of these categories, for me, it remained more often than not in the first tier or maybe the second tier, right? But eventually, as I sort of started listening more to, people like Aretha Franklin, Shaka Khan, that really enabled me to access my spiritual aspect with respect to Ella, right? There's a black history. Yeah? These are black women, okay, who were not given the access to certain, stages. Certain performative, like certain theaters and certain stages. So they had to fight for their access to these spaces to perform. And the fact that they could go out there and perform in these spaces, which were highly discriminating, right? It was a huge matter of revolutionary, right? Like, it was a huge revolutionary matter. So, I mean,
it moves you because you can also relate to it.
I could.
Because
that's
of your
what,
context.
Because of my
being a refugee, much like myself. Like
that's exactly what I was referring to a while back. You have to be aware of your context. Without that, you can't connect with music. You have to let it touch you.
Because human beings are same. चाहे वो यहाँ हो या
New
York बैठे हो.
Yeah.
And going through the same
what is music? Music is essentially about storytelling. It's not about
expression. Who
knows better and who could do better, or who could sing that riff, or who could sing lower, or who could sing higher, right? Music is about emoting. Music is about sharing an experience. Music is about storytelling. As long as you're doing that, you are indulging in music. If you're not,
mic drop कर दो.
May I?
नहीं पागल बड़े महंगे हैं यार. But yeah, you're right. Music is about expression.
It's about. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is as simple as that. It's about, putting a narrative across, and you have to do it the right. Sorry, but like the music is the boss in the room. The music is
the boss.
The queen / the king. You come later. You come much later. You are a vessel. You maybe a stakeholder, but music has to be served before you are served.
Sonny
right?
Rollins भी यही बोलता है.
Yeah.
You're right. A lot of
Plus,
great
Miles
musicians.
Davis, I mean, talks about how it takes a long time for you to recognize your individuality, your tonality.
Yeah,
you know,
he says
it's
that it takes about a few decades to actually sound like yourself.
sound like yourself.
Which
Exactly.
can be interpreted in a multiple sort of
Yeah.
multi-layered things
Yeah.
that him and Wayne Shorter have
Uh-huh.
said. But अगर आपको नहीं पता है इन लोगों के बारे में तो आप गूगल करिए, सर्च करिए, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. And I think that brings us to the ending part of this whole conversation. We were actually going to talk about vocal technique. So just a quick 2 minutes about how should a young vocalist, like you, I have seen you where in a few performances you really did not, तुम मेरे को आके बोलती थी कि यार मेरे को ना I think my technique needs to improve. So how are you improving that?
Initially, I don't know if you know this, but initially when I was jamming with you all and, you know, performing with you all, there were times when I would choke while performing. And that was really disheartening for me, like to see that happening to myself. And again, that comes from, that comes from an increase in awareness of your voice and your individuality. At times as singers, you know, you want to sound like Ella. Right? You exactly want to sound like her. You exactly want a project like her. But in that process, you end up losing yourself. The way our anatomy is structured, right? We have voices, and the way these voices are projected, there's this thing called resonance. So, resonance is basically vibration of your voice, and how that voice is eventually, when the sound is created, it's supposed to be vibrated a certain way. Now, what impacts this extent and level of vibration? It's the room for your voice or the room for your sound. It's the room for your sound basically that influences its nature of reverberation, right? These are some really heavy words. I'm so sorry, but I'm just trying to simplify this. And
Shrey looks as
I'm
dead
sorry.
as inanimate object. But take it, go.
But yeah, so the bottom line that I'm trying to basically cut across here is that you have to understand that there's an individuality to your voice, and as long as you don't recognize that, you're gonna end up choking because in your head you have an ideal type.
So how do you sort that out, like quickly?
You practice. No, I'm not shitting you. You just have to you have to go ahead.
I totally
you sit with yourself,
address that myself as well every day when I'm practicing.
You're supposed to sit with yourself alone, calm down, get your breathing technique right, have adequate breath control mechanism with you, and then you sit with your voice.
Play the damn song basically.
Yeah, and then you could perhaps, you don't have to exactly sound like Stevie Wonder. You have to sound like yourself.
What you're essentially saying is कि उनको सुनो, but अपना individual जो है point of view वो भी रखो.
Yeah, have them as references behind you.
Sure.
Yeah, because if you try to sound like them, you're gonna end up choking. You're gonna end up straining your voice.
Because तुमने उतनी technique practice नहीं की, उनकी technique भी शायद practice
not even that. Because you're manipulating your voice the wrong way. That's the thing, right? Manipulating. You're an idiot. You really are an idiot.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, that's the bottom line of this. And I've practiced so much. I've transcribed so much, so many solos, but I've never ever tried to, not anymore. I'm trying to sort of focus on my individuality more rather than mimicking somebody else's individuality, right? So you need to distinguish between what sets you apart. There's some, I don't want to say USP. It's just weird. But you have to sort of demarcate your USP from others, right? And you have to work on that USP. And
unique. Just the
unique aspects and the individual aspects of your voice.
Perfect.
Yeah, and that will help you sort your voice health out.
I think that really sums up everything. We've talked about history. We've talked about how and when you've accumulated all of your musical knowledge from. And I think that sums it up for today. We'll be back with another session where Vrnda will discuss her favorite songs and how she breaks down them. And that'll happen later. Thank you so much, Vrnda, for being a part of this.
Thank you, Abhay Sharma, for having me on this podcast.
See you guys.
It's lovely.
See you guys.